Okay, let's do it. Hi y'all, my name is Kenzie, and I'm gonna ask you guys to be patient with me for my first couple videos. I usually do everything book related on a Snapchat private story, but people have asked me to go ahead and make a YouTube channel, maybe so more people can see it, or maybe it's just easier than watching it on Snapchat. But regardless, I decided to listen to them, and here we are. Little platform switch. So I figured that my first video would be a review of a book called All Good People Here by Ashley Flowers. A little context about Ashley before we get into like my thoughts and opinions about the book. So she's a host, or she's one of two hosts on a podcast called Crime Junkie, and it's basically all things true crime. So they cover murder cases, missing persons cases, cold cases, and I believe that they've done a few serial killers as well. So it's definitely interesting to listen to, nonetheless. And when I heard that she was writing a book, I was a little nervous because, obviously books and podcasts are a little different, and I didn't really know what to expect. Like, she goes into great detail on her podcast, which is great. I appreciate that, but in a book, writing for a book is different than writing for a podcast. So I was a little nervous, but after reading, I was nervous for absolutely no reason. Little backstory about the book, really quick. So this book has two main characters with two different time periods, I guess. The first one is Margot Davies, and her story takes place in 2019. And the second one is Chrissy Jacobs, and her story takes place in 1994. So Chrissy Jacobs is a mother of two, January and Jace Jacobs, and she's married to Billy Jacobs. Margot, back in 1994, she was just a little girl. She was really good friends with January. And so when January went missing and, eventually ended up murdered, that kind of sparked Margot's interest in, investigations and figuring out the truth. Ashley did a really good job of keeping us in suspense through, the whole book. Just over page 120, so I want to say 120-ish. That's when things kind of start hitting the fan, and we start learning, details of January's case and, the people who were viewed as suspects in January's case. And where was I going with this? Yes, I remember now. And so that's when we start learning a lot of important information. So Ashley did a cute little trick of bolding important information, so it kind of sticks in your mind more than the rest of the text, which I thought was interesting because you don't really see that in books. It's usually italicized, or if it means something, it's italicized, or if it's for emphasis, it's italicized. But in this book, it's bolded, which I liked. I thought that was a little different. She starts the plot twists early, again around page 120-ish, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little after. But that's when things start hitting the fan, for real. You start learning things about the case, about January's case, which is similar to Natalie's case. And you learn secrets that nobody knew. And yeah, it's just really interesting. I can't really say too much because I don't want to spoil it. But when Chrissy met Jody, I was not expecting that in the slightest. I mean, like, good for her, but also, like, girl, you literally can't. And the chapters are long. Not, like, super long, but, like, 20-ish pages, give or take some. But they don't feel long. Like, there's so much detail, and there's so many things happening. You're just like, oh, I gotta keep reading. I have to know what happens. Like, you did this last chapter, but you're doing this now. Like, what about the thing you did last chapter, you know? So, they're long, but they don't feel like it, which is nice. Because I hate long chapters, personally. If the chapters are long, I don't like reading the book. And I'll usually drop it. But yeah. And then another thing that Ashley does, which is fantastic. I love when it happens. So you're led to believe one thing, okay? Stay with me because this is kind of a process. You're led to believe one thing, and then you're like, oh, it's not that, it's this. And you're like, oh, but it could be this. And then at the end of the chapter, Ashley's like, all of those are wrong. It's actually this. So this whole book is just like one big mind-messing plot. Like, it messes with your mind because, you know, you so badly want to be right with these types of books, you know, in like regards to whodunit. But when you're like, I don't have an inkling as to who could have done it, you know, you're like, oh crap, like, it's him, but it's not him, but I want it to be him. And the person who did it in this book, you will not see it coming. You will not see it coming. Ashley didn't really have too many sad moments in the book. You know, there were some parts, but it wasn't like it didn't like really resonate with you, you know, if that makes sense. Like, it was like, oh, that's sad. Wish it was different, but that's sad. She has moments like that throughout the book, but the last chapter, it's the epilogue, that was so messed up. It like thinking about it, I have no words. That's why there's no words. It was so messed up. It broke my heart. She didn't deserve that in the slightest. Not in the slightest. No one deserves that. Not even like who it was intended for deserved that. But, you know, it happened. I'm gonna break this up into two parts. So the last 3 chapters, okay, keep that in mind. So the 2 chapters before the last chapter, you think everything's coming together, you know, like, yeah, it's getting spelled out for us, typical of books, you know, it's getting spelled out for us. You can follow how, you know, Margot got to where she got and the conclusion she got to, you know, you're following all of it. And then the second to last chapter ends, and you're just kind of like, well, what happened? Like, personally, it left me really, like, unfulfilled, if that makes sense, because as I've mentioned before countless times, because I apparently like repeating myself, like, everything was done, everything was wrapped up in a nice little bow, and then things hit the fan again, and you're like, what happened? Like, what happened? And we never know what happened, so I'm probably gonna Google it because I need to know what happened. But the last chapter was so out of left field. Like, nothing in the book prepares you for the mind mess that is the last chapter. Like, it's essentially a third POV. So the first two POVs are, you know, Margot and Chrissy, and the story is told through them. The last chapter, it's the epilogue. But so the epilogue is told through Billy's POV in 1994. And nothing, guys, listen to me when I tell you, nothing in the book could have prepared you for what happened in the epilogue. Like, nothing. Because it talks about what happened that night, like the night January went missing, throughout the book, you know, and it was like, oh yeah, Chrissy, the mom of January, found out what actually happened, and, you know, then she died. Like, Chrissy just died. And so it's like, okay, she was killed because she knew too much. But it's like, okay, what did she know? Second to last chapter, or the last chapter, sorry, was so messy. It was told through Billy's POV. Yeah. So overall, I'm gonna give this book I'm gonna say 4 stars out of 5. The reason I'm giving it 4 stars, not 5, is because I need to know what happens in the second to last chapter. You can't just leave us like this. Like, that's my only beef. That is my only beef, is I don't know what happens. No one knows what happens. No one's gonna know what happens because it's wrapped up in a neat little bow. So there's not gonna be a sequel. Super swag. Okay. Alright, guys. Well, that was my review and thoughts and opinions on All Good People Here by Ashley Flowers. If you want to read, I will leave the link down below. You can only get it on Amazon, so it's gonna be a little pricey, but it's definitely worth the read, in my opinion. Guys, well, that is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you'll join me on this journey as we, you know, kind of figure things out together. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you want me to do, or if there's anything I can improve on. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.